Whoa! I can't believe how much fun Zoltar is. I'm already at level 24. Whoa. What are you doing in here? I told you wait outside and we'll do it after. I'm not gonna do it right. We're going right now. Hi, welcome to Should You Buy It, where I help you decide whether or not a game, or in this case a console, is worth your time and money. Now, you've already read the title of the video, so you know that we're gonna be looking at the Nintendo Switch today. This has been out for about 2 months now, and I played it for over 200 hours all around the world, literally. So I think I'm ready to decide whether or not this is worth your time and money. So keep watching if you're not one of the 14 billion people who have already bought one, and I'll answer the question, should you buy it? After I call the authorities, because you're not allowed in here. I told you, wait outside.
Hey, fuck you, man.
I'm taking a sh**. So in case you haven't heard, the Nintendo Switch is tearing ass around the backyard right now. At the time this video is being made, the Switch has been selling out the ass all over the world. But all those sales are really based more around hype than anything else. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't hurt to have Zelda Breath of the Wild, one of the greatest games of all time, as a launch title, but the Switch sold out worldwide on day one before anybody really got a chance to play that, as great of a game as it was. And besides 2 games that were ported over from the Wii U and a few others, there really isn't a whole lot to talk about at the moment, so I'm just gonna focus on the console itself. I know a console is no good without the games, but trust me, after they're done finishing up the last few 3DS games, this will be the only platform Nintendo's making content for, besides a few cell phone games every year, but that doesn't really count. I'm sure there's gonna be plenty of good games on the way, even outside of the ones we already know about, and I dare say from third parties as well. So back to the dang console. The Nintendo Switch costs $300, and aside from the obvious essentials like the tablet, dock, hookups, and all that, it comes with the Joy-Con controllers, which are kinda like tiny little Wii remotes, as well as this weird-ass thing that combines with said Joy-Cons to make a decent but lacking controller. I mean, it's alright if you don't feel like spending more on a Pro Controller, but if you've got the money lying around, then you really should do yourself a favor and spend the extra scratch. The aforementioned Pro Controller costs $70 at retail, and while it's not essential, it really does feel way better than this ghoulish-ass thing right here. But like I said, if you really are broke, then honestly, the standard controller really isn't that bad. It's just that this is so much better. It's a tad expensive for a controller, but it has the same technology from the Joy-Cons built into it, which means you can do things like use motion controls for quick gaming with your bow in Breath of the Wild like you would with a Wii remote, which is something that I loved about the Wii with games like Twilight Princess and Metroid Prime. But the real beauty of it is that you don't need this spooky-looking sensor bar hanging over your TV screen sending nude photos of you practicing wrestling moves on your dog to the FBI. Not that I would ever do that, of course, but I want the option to without some brute federal agent laughing at my pee-pee. And if you don't like all that motion control malarkey, then you can just turn it off and play games the traditional way with analog sticks. Plus, the HD Rumble can do a whole bunch of other stuff that I haven't even had a chance to try yet, like milking cows in a 1-2 switch and giving yourself enemas and... well, I don't really know what game that's supposed to be for. The GameStop manager assured me it was coming out soon and took me to the back room to practice, but I didn't really like it and I probably won't pick it up. And if you have any amiibos lying around, then the Pro Controller also has a built-in scanner for them. So at the risk of sounding like a biased Nintendo fanboy, I'm gonna give the Big N a pass for having their controller cost $10 more than Microsoft and Sony's respective controllers. When the Switch was first announced, I was a little disappointed at the thought of losing the pointer technology altogether because I thought it was weird for Nintendo to hype that up as being a part of the future with the Wii, only to just get rid of it completely. So great for me, and if you don't like it, then it doesn't affect you because we've also got analog sticks. It's a win-win situation for everybody, and I dare say that the Pro Controller is the greatest controller of all time! Again, not a fanboy. The Xbox One controller is just as good, but it doesn't have all the extras included, so the Switch wins by an ass hair. Anyway, while you have the option to portably play games with the tablet and Pro Controller, doing so is just a hassle. Especially in an airplane like they showed in the trailer, which I did try in an international flight, but sadly didn't get a chance to record. It works just fine holding the tablet with the Joy-Cons attached. Not as well as a 3DS or PS Vita due to its inability to fit in your pocket, but it feels better than I thought it would. I mean, it's not heavy or anything, but the battery life could have been a smidge better. I played Breath of the Wild, which I'd imagine is a game that uses a decent amount of battery, and I got about 2.5 to 3 hours out of it like Nintendo said I would. Apparently, if you play games that aren't as powerful, it'll last longer, but for this to be touted as a portable, it'd have been a little more ideal to get at least 4 or 5 hours out of it. But 3 hours is pretty reasonable at the moment, I suppose, since USB ports really aren't that hard to come by. If you have a USB charging cable, that is. The greatest controller in all of space and time comes with one, but sadly not the console itself. At least it didn't come with one of these obnoxiously large brick adapters like older consoles did, though. I mean, look at these things. I'm sure I'm not the only one who spent a lot of time in the emergency room as a kid for getting these things stuck up my ass all the time. But with the overuse of butt jokes aside, though, a lot of people keep talking about the graphical capabilities of the Switch, or lack thereof. And while the graphics might not be on par with a PS4 Pro or Xbox One Scorpio, it's at the very least as powerful as a Wii U, which is acceptable to me since it's completely portable. The Wii U is partially portable, but only with select games, so you're not gonna play and shit anywhere besides in your own bathroom. With the Switch, not only can you play games while shitting in other bathrooms, but you can also play games and shit anywhere you want. And to tell you the truth, they say it's supposed to be a little more powerful when it's docked, but I don't notice a difference. It seems like it just connects it to the TV, which is fine by me. Regardless, it's 2017, and graphics really aren't gonna get that much better, as you can see with the same games being on the PS3 and PS4 as well as Xbox 360 and Xbox One. And most of the time, the differences between the two versions aren't even noticeable to the average person. Some people out there might get flustered to hear me say that, but back in the day, upgrades between current and next-gen consoles was a night and day difference, not only graphically, but in the gameplay as well, and that's not really the case anymore. The 64 was not only more powerful than the Super Nintendo graphically, but it could also run games in 3D. And the GameCube wasn't just considerably more powerful than the 64, but it also had games like Pikmin, which weren't capable of running on the 64-bit system. I mean, can you imagine 100 different Pikmin with their own AI running on the 64? And since Nintendo phoned in the graphics for the Wii, see, I'm not a fanboy, let's compare the PS2 with the PS3, or the Xbox and Xbox 360 if that's your cup of tea. There was a big upgrade in graphics, but once again, the increase in power led to more capabilities for gameplay, and not just by things simply looking prettier. I mean, just look at how much bigger and better Grand Theft Auto was. That couldn't run on a PS2. Not to mention the Arkham games, BioShock, Last of Us, you get the picture. But this last generation was just weird. There's really not that much of a difference. Games that fully utilize the PS4 and Xbox One's hardware look noticeably better than in previous generations, but the gameplay is more or less the same. That's why I understand Nintendo's approach of realizing that graphics are just fine and that it shouldn't be the focus. But all I'm trying to say is that if you're skeptical about getting a Switch because the graphics aren't up to par with the other two consoles, then I'd be inclined to ask if you'd really want to sacrifice having a home console that's also portable, lose the portability just to look 10 to 20% prettier with no actual improvements in the gameplay? Well, if you do, then you, kind sir or madam, are a ninny. The Switch is very comfortable at home and on the go, and the graphics are still prettier than your mammy. Plus, it's pretty cool to not have it be a situation every time you turn the console on. And what I mean by that is that it takes like 2 seconds to pick a controller up and be in the game, especially if it's the same game you were playing the last time the console was on. I know that's technically because it's always on and in sleep mode, but even if you fully power it off, it doesn't take that long to boot up, and it doesn't make much noise when you're playing either. Not to mention there's no more discs to deal with anymore. Instead, we get little game cards that technically aren't cartridges, but shut your butt and let me be nostalgic and pretend they are for a second. And I must say, on top of having the best controller of all time, the Switch games taste better than any games from any other console in history. Nintendo really wanted to go one step beyond this time around and create games for kids not only to enjoy, but to have something to eat when they're done. It's a clever way to increase value in your product while simultaneously battling the used games market. And with this power play, GameStop already announced that they're closing 150 stores. Smart move, Nintendo. I only wish save data were stored on the actual game cards instead of the console, but maybe some games will do it. I don't know, I've only had the system for a month. Either way, it's not that big a deal since the Switch has 32 gigabytes of system memory, and I know what a lot of you are thinking right now. Believe me, I've seen everybody pissing and shitting all over the internet about how there's not enough storage. And if the Switch needed to download or install every game in order to play them, then yeah, I'd agree. But it doesn't do that, now does it? Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's to my understanding that video games on this console are on the actual physical media and don't require installs or downloads to play them. You know, kinda like how things have always been and should have remained up until a couple of years ago. With the Switch, you just buy a game, put it in your system, and play it right away, even if you don't have an internet connection. Games still have updates, sure, but they aren't required. 32 gigabytes is just for games you might download, and yeah, some are bigger than 32 gigs, but it's not like you need to take the whole system apart just to add more storage. All you need to do is just slip an SD card in there, you dum-dums. But as much as I love the Switch, I do have to admit that while it's being promoted as $300, it still doesn't come with a game, and you probably should buy a Pro Controller. Not to mention an extra SD card if you do plan to download games, because a lot of them are digitally exclusive. So yeah, it isn't as cheap as it seems, even if all you plan to do is buy one game and no extra accessories. But it is a portable console with plenty of amazing games on the way. Most likely. Some people call it a powerful handheld that has a TV adapter, like a PlayStation Vita that comes with a PlayStation TV. But even if that's how you look at it, the graphics still look just fine to me, and probably over 95% of the people watching this video. So if you aren't hurting on money, then I'd say you definitely should buy a Nintendo Switch. And if you're broke, then at least wait for more games to come out. But what do you think? Do you own a Switch? Do you find it comfortable to play? What games do you think taste the best? Let me know down below, and thanks for watching. If you like this video, then don't forget to smash that like button. Just one time, though. If you hit it multiple times, you might cancel your own like out. And subscribe for more if you'd like, but if you aren't sold quite yet, then why don't you check one of these 2 videos out here. Thanks again for watching, though. See you next time.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.